The upcoming Formula One World Championship is expected to be more competitive than previous seasons, anticipating a double fight for the title influenced by multiple factors. The current curiosity focuses on who will start in a favorable position, without neglecting the subsequent development, which will be more complex than ever due to technical and logistical complications, with the 2026 Formula One regulations looming. Additionally, Ferrari and the rest of the teams are facing stricter flexibility tests for the front wing, a technical directive that, if the championship proves to be balanced, may not be the last. The competitiveness of the initial projects will determine the legitimacy of the title aspirations of the individual contenders. However, it would be wrong to jump to conclusions after just the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne for two main reasons. The first is that each team will follow its own learning curve, adapting setups to make the best use of the available package, achieving improvements on the lap time even without any updates. A clear example is McLaren's 2024 car, which, even before the Miami aerodynamic upgrade package, showed consistent progress in the first months, demonstrating a gradual optimization. For 2025, the focus is primarily on Ferrari. The SF25 single-seater represents a project that is fundamentally different from its predecessor, not only because of changes to the architecture and suspension, but also in its handling, with a front end that is notably more pointed than before. This suggests a new package that should have a lot of room for growth, with technical director Loic Serra explicitly expecting a rapid development curve for the Maranello team's technicians and engineers. The second reason why the Melbourne Weekend will not be a definitive verdict is the partial picture that will emerge in Australia. In such a varied calendar with cars that are highly sensitive to track types, track surface, and environmental conditions, there are no longer fully representative circuits. The competitiveness of the initial projects will be fully appreciated after the first month, and it will still be an essential reference for the title race's dynamics. With the 2026 Formula One regulations on the horizon, the initial performance of each car will determine how much each team is willing to believe in and develop their current project before fully committing to the next one. Never before has developing the cars without making mistakes been such a challenge. Ground effect Formula One cars have shown that the more aerodynamic downforce is increased, the greater the risk of unpredictability in handling. Without side skirts, the intensification of the ground effect exposes the car more to external turbulence, adding to all those physical phenomena that are unpredictable with design tools, only becoming evident when it is too late. Ferrari's bouncing in 2024 and the gradual deterioration of Red Bull's balance are proof of how costly development missteps can be. Ferrari team principal Vasseur stated last February that the competition was becoming increasingly tight, leading to a greater focus on details. The Frenchman explained that when updates were introduced, they involved only a few points of downforce, making precise quantification essential. According to him, this required effective tools and well-informed decisions, highlighting the growing importance of simulation tools. He also emphasized that drivability played a larger role in performance than in the past, further underscoring the significance of the simulator. Technical directives have also played a major role, and this year will not be any different. Starting with the Australian Grand Prix, new deformation criteria will come into effect for the rear wings and beam wings, while at the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona, stricter tests will debut for the flexibility of the front wings. The FIA formalized the new rule less than 2 weeks before the start of the championship, though teams were already aware of it. It is rather unlikely that this restriction will significantly shake up the competitive order, but it remains a development to monitor. The beam wing interacts aerodynamically with both the diffuser and the rear wing, and during DRS activation, its deformation helps enhance the system's effectiveness. These restrictions should not be underestimated, as in addition to reducing aerodynamic drag on the straights, the flexing of the front wing helps balance the car by fighting oversteer at high speeds and increasing understeer in slower corners. However, the recent tightening of the FIA regulations may not be enough to put an end to the controversies. Experience shows that for every constraint, teams always find new ways to exploit the deformation of the wing profiles, while still passing the checks from the race officials. Equally important are the tests for the flaps above the main profile, which will still be subjected to a 60N load, equivalent to just over 3 kilograms. For each profile, the trailing edge can now deform only up to 3 millimeters, compared to the current 5 millimeters, requiring a 66% increase in bending resistance. Teams continue to downplay the impact of these new tests, though the stricter limits will deprive them of a powerful tool for balancing their cars when transitioning between high and low speeds. The flexible wing directives might not be the only technical directives of the season. If the 2025 Formula One Championship really does deliver a title fight between two or more teams, it is inevitable that each team will request clarification and checks against the others, with the likely emergence of new cases. The dogma for everyone will be to push the limits of the regulations without breaking them, but equally crucial will be the ability to react swiftly to any directives from the Federation. The tire factor should also not be underestimated, especially in the upcoming championship. A new feature for the 2025 Formula One season is the Pirelli tires, which have been revised in both the compound and the construction. Therefore, teams will have to monitor their learning curve on this front as well, adapting setups and driving strategies to make the most of the new product. The pre-season testing session at the Bahrain circuit did not show significant changes, but the verdict from a race weekend on a different track is still awaited. One of the goals of the new Pirelli tires is to reduce graining wear, which has been one of McLaren's main weaknesses in 2024, and a result may already be visible at the 5.278-kilometer Albert Park Grand Prix circuit in Melbourne. Last but not least, the human factor will also be a crucial aspect for the outcome of the 2025 Formula One Championship. The hope is that the new season will reflect the dynamics of the previous one, with a general balance, 4 teams fighting for victory, and power dynamics evolving race by race depending on the characteristics of each track, with the hope, of course, that Ferrari will come out on top after narrowly missing out on last year's constructors' title. In such a scenario, where design differences translate into marginal differences on the stopwatch, the execution of the weekend will be decisive for the Maranello team, both in terms of factory setup preparation and the work done on track by mechanics, engineers, and the 2 drivers, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur has reiterated this several times in the last few weeks. In addition to securing victories when conditions allow it, what will count for the Italian side is the ability to minimize losses during those weekends when the inevitable limitations of the aerodynamic package will prevent Ferrari from aiming for the maximum result. At the same time, it is worth pointing out that retirements will be very costly, both figuratively and literally. Every euro spent on spare parts will be one less euro for updates, and this applies not only to aerodynamics but to power units as well, whose replacements will impact the engine budget cap and the final development of the 2026 Formula One power unit, a project that will hang like a sword of Damocles over all the teams this year.